You're listening to the soothing sounds of the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Oh, hello, my friend.
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good. Do you want to share anything with our audience?
I don't know. I feel like when I type, it's going to be a little difficult.
Because you have a big, heavy rock on your finger?
He put a ring on it.
He put a ring on it. And it's not the rock like from the Sean Connery movie. It's a legitimate rock.
Which, if you listen to our earlier episodes,
yes,
you will hear this relationship unfold.
I am almost certain it was our first or second episode where we're talking about being catfished.
Yes.
And you say this guy who catfished you was a train conductor.
Which I thought was a made-up job.
Yeah, that's a fake job. And I said, no, nay. My friend Mario is a train conductor. And then my friend Mario is who she's marrying.
Yeah. So all aboard the engagement train.
That's right.
I'm going to be a bridezilla.
No, she's not. She better not be.
I can't afford to be. Don't worry.
We're too poor to be bridezillas.
It's going to be an all vintage thrift wedding.
That's why I'm her matron of honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, but we're here to talk to you about something far less celebratory and exciting.
I know.
Because this is part due, or as my child would say, part doo-doo of Project 2025. So, this is going to be a flaming pile of feces. And we're going to talk about how this plan intends to dismantle federal agencies in accordance with the Christian right-wing agenda.
It already is.
I know. It's already.
He's not even in office and it's starting.
Things are happening.
How can that be?
Well, I think that with the Republican majority, it's easy to see things going in this direction. But we averted the shutdown of government. And we saw some Republican pushback, so maybe all's not lost. So, today we're going to really be focusing on the departments that are going to be impacted if Project 2025 becomes a reality. Again, we know that reading 900 pages is a lot for folks, so we are not going to get everything, y'all. No. Just know that now. We're primarily focusing on the things that are super, super important to us. And so, just know we're not going to get it all. So, But, unless you're a super rich white dude or a corporation, like we said in the last part of this episode, this plan is not for you. And we have the receipts to prove it. So we're going to be discussing said receipts today. Are we ready?
I don't know.
I know. I'm on such a high, bro.
I know. No, it's good. We got to, the more we talk about these things and the more real they are, I think the more practically we can start making choices and decisions that do feel empowering.
I think so too. And I think that, Project 2025 started more as not a fringe thing, but when folks first started talking about it in public, a lot of people didn't know what it was. And then look at the momentum. Look at now it's in our everyday language, like politicians are talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. So I think the more folks know about it, the more you can resist. And on that note, know that at the end of this, we are going to leave you with some strategies, some tactics, and some words of hope to hopefully alleviate some of that, these feelings of hopelessness that I think a lot of us are feeling going into the upcoming inauguration.
Yeah. Well, and you put it perfectly where you were, that limerence or, sorry, not limerence, but it's that meh feeling of like, am I powerful enough to do something? And the answer is yes, always.
Yeah. No, I think we should not, as Americans, as humans, underestimate the difference people can make, especially when we work together to, on collective action.
Yes.
So that's the big takeaway. So, but first, we want to start you off with this quote from, it's this guide called Indivisible, a comprehensive guide to preserving democracy, prepared by an org called, I didn't write what the org was. I'll let you guys know at the end. Whoops, been really busy. So I love this quote. If there's one universally accepted truth in the modern age, it's that sequels suck. And Trump 2.0 will be no exception. Trump, Vance, and their MAGA minions feel vindicated by the victory of their bigoted, what does it say? Fascistic? Fascistic. I've never.
That's funny. I thought you wrote this, and I was like, "Wow, Jen's getting really funny."
No,
I didn't realize.
Fascistic, which is cool. Fascistic clown show of a presidential campaign. I would have just said fascist clown show. So Trump takes. Oh, that word's missing. Something. Oaths with a plan to institute the worst parts of Project 2025. He'll be enabled by a judiciary packed with right-wing ideologues and a congressional majority stacked with MAGA foot soldiers. And he's assembled a block of corporations and billionaires eager to do his bidding in exchange for tax cuts and corporate favors. But he has no mandate for the staggeringly harmful agenda he's about to unleash on the country. And together, we have the power to fight back and win. So yes, we're going to start with hope and we're going to fucking end with hope, y'all. And hopefully no more of my words and phrases are missing. But it's the end of the year. It's busy.
He's been a little busy.
Yeah. I'm in a new role at work. It's fucking nuts in the best way possible. I'm a mom during the holidays. My kid just went through an illness.
And he's old enough to like really get Christmas now. So now like you really have to make it magical.
We're trying to make it magical. That's all. That's what I'm living for as a parent and trying not to die in the process via alcohol poisoning, because that's what you need. We're like the parents in the Christmas Story, all drinking wine at 9 a.m. as their kids open presents. That's going to be us.
I love it.
So now it's time to focus on which federal departments are going to get fucked, as well as which social services, most of which we pay into, are going to be altered or exterminated. This is from the National Association of Social Workers. They wrote a great report. So for the purposes of this discussion, the concern is that those departments and regulatory agencies that are responsible for managing safety net programs, civil rights protections, and environmental safety would directly or indirectly be micromanaged by the Trump White House. When we realize that 100 million Americans, one way or another, depend on or benefit from social safety net, environmental, and civil rights protections managed by the administrative state, we can see how devastating dismantlement and far-right micromanagement of these departments could be. So what departments are going to be impacted? Surely we will not get them all, but here are some of the biggies. So the Department of Agriculture. All right, what does the Department of Agriculture do? So SNAP. Think about SNAP. It's what we used to call food stamps, food assistance. It's the country's largest nutritional assistance program, serving an average of around 41 million people, or over 10% of the population per month. The Project 2025 reforms would make it more difficult for people to qualify for food stamps. The project also wants to roll back changes made by the Biden administration to increase SNAP benefits over 10 years to keep up with the rising cost of food.
But I thought Trump was going to lower the grocery bills.
Oh, this is why we don't need it. This is why I know people aren't going to need the 41 million people who take advantage of SNAP aren't going to need it, because once those tariffs hit and once we got white people working them fields, everything's going to be
because that usually works out. Right? Well, cool.
Yes, totally. So 2020 Project 2025 advises the Trump administration to make work requirements more stringent so that fewer recipients can be given a work requirement exemption. USDA estimated that the stringent work requirements would result in about 688,000 people who would lose their SNAP benefits. All right. So if SNAP eligibility requirement goes into effect, the USDA estimated that as many as 3.1 million people, or 9% of SNAP recipients, would lose their benefits.
And think, what is even qualifying you nowadays to be for SNAP?
You have to be pretty low
less
income.
than $30,000 a year.
It's pretty low.
You can't live off that.
No, you can't. And I think they're federal requirements. They might be state by state. I'm not sure. But think about the cost of living in California, right? $30,000 a year doesn't go as far in California as it does in, some small state. So it's really disgusting. And also we should be asking why there are 41 million people in this country who can't afford food. And many of those people are working.
Yes.
Working. The last time I looked at the statistics from the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan office, I think it was something like, I can't remember, but the majority of people, or a huge percentage of the people who receive government benefits like SNAP, are fucking working people.
In a developed country.
Yeah. They're working. One job, as Biden is very fond of saying, should be enough. And you should get benefits with that job. You should be paid a living friggin' wage with that job, and you should have set hours and safety standards. This is what the Amazon workers are striking for right now. No Amazon guys, at least until Amazon comes to the bargaining table. Stand with Amazon workers, stand with the Teamsters. Thank you. Let's talk about the Department of Education.
Moving on from, you're not going to get to eat.
No, you're not going to get to eat. Oh, and your education options are going to be even more fucked up because Project 2025 plans to eliminate the entire Department of Education and redirect the funds to a privatized education structure, because privatizing things always works.
Right.
The Center for American Progress has conducted an in-depth analysis that reveals that Project 2025 seeks to eliminate funding for low-income schools, jeopardizing over 180,000 teaching positions, because teachers are already paid so well.
Right.
Let's go and fuck them more.
Right.
Let's remove much-needed teachers from the schools that have the highest need, the most IEPs, the kids who have the most challenges, and take things away from them. Makes perfect sense.
Right.
So this blueprint would end something called Title I. So Title I was established in 1965 and was created in response to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, recognizing students' more significant educational needs in high poverty schools and the lack of state resources. Title I supports nearly 2/3 of public schools and low-income students. We have a lot of Title I schools in San Francisco. Yeah. Project 2025 plans to disinvest in programs supporting the academic needs of vulnerable students, including those with disabilities under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
How can this be?
It's reprehensible.
How is this constitutional?
It's reprehensible. Well, hopefully there'll be some fighting back, but we'll talk about who he's trying to install over the Department of Education, which is a shit show in and of itself. So, what else? Title I, Part A of Every Student Succeeds Act provides supplemental federal funding to ensure all children receive a fair, equitable, and high-quality education. That's going to be no more if Project 2025 goes into effect. Project 2025's proposal to phase out Title I reverses efforts to retain teachers, including legislation to increase teacher pay. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And let's talk a bit about who he wants to put over the Department of Education. Anybody know about the WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, or what is it called? The World Wrestling, I don't know. It's not the Federation.
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so Linda McMahon, she and her husband used to run the WWE.
Just watched the Netflix documentary on this.
Did you?
Yeah,
really I got to check it out.
It's good.
I'm fascinated by wrestling.
Oh, it's totally.
Really fascinated. And TKO Group Holdings, the league's parent company. And the suit that has come out against the WWE, the parent company, and both Linda and Vince, I believed, are named in it, alleges that they knowingly allowed this employee, this perv named Melvin Phillips, to use his position as ringside announcer to sexually exploit children. They fired this motherfucker. They got so many complaints from people because he was super brazen about his abuse from people that worked for them that they fired him, and then they brought him back 6 weeks later. And they're like, don't touch children, all right? He's like,
okay,
all right, I won't. And then, of course, proceeded to molest children. So that's who's going to be running the Department of Education for as long as it continues to, be in existence.
Well, they won't have their thoughts anymore. They'll just have their prayers in school.
But once you put the 10 Commandments on the wall, that's all
they need,
they don't
right?
Need food. They just need the 10 Commandments.
God will give them everything. Yes. They deserve it.
Just pray and your belly will fill full.
Well, if you deserve it. And if you don't, then that was just God's way of saying you weren't deserving. Yep.
It's your fault for being poor.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Department of Homeland Security.
We're kidding, by the way.
Yeah, we are. If you can't sense the sarcasm, then you don't know Jen and Carolyn very well. So Department of Homeland Security. The Trump administration would cancel the Flores settlement, which generally prevents the government from detaining children and families indefinitely. The administration would reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy of forcing non-Mexican citizens to wait in Mexico while their asylum cases are pending. The president of Mexico was like, can you not send us people who aren't actually Mexican citizens? That's really not fucking cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's so bad for so many reasons. So stiff sanctions would be imposed on countries that refuse to accept deportees from the United States. A new Trump administration would force states and cities that receive Federal Emergency Management Agency grants, FEMA, to share databases such as that of their Department of Motor Vehicles with the federal government for immigration enforcement purposes. They want to increase ICE detention capacity to 100,000 beds. By comparison, in 2019, the Trump administration asked Congress to fund 52,000 beds. So further pressure on the budget will be caused by the project's call for loosening detention standards, which by definition will result in a large increase of detainees. And if you don't care about migrants, if you don't care about refugees, care about your tax dollars that are going to be used to pay for detaining these folks.
Well, these are basically going to be the new concentration camps.
Pretty much.
This is their final solution to that.
Pretty much. And we saw what happened during Trump 1, and there were bad things happening during the Biden administration too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not happy with the way that was handled either. Right. But remember, children being separated from their parents, babies. I read horror stories, and as a mom, it is disgusting. As a human being, it should be disgusting.
And we don't even, I don't even have any. Do we have any proof that that isn't still even going on?
Well, I think even during the Biden administration, it was going on for a while. And I think they tried to end it. And I don't remember all the details. I just remember that conditions weren't great during the Biden administration either in terms of, deportation and these holding camps, whatever. But so directly affected nearly 700,000 people with temporary protected status. So there's 530,000 DACA recipients. That's deferred action for childhood arrival, folks who came here as children living in the U.S., 12 million green card holders, and 11 million undocumented immigrants, migrants who live in the U.S.
Yes. And you and I are friends with many people who fall into that category.
Yeah.
And they're all working and they're all contributing and they're not eating dogs.
No, they're not eating dogs and cats, I promise. And they contribute billions of dollars in tax revenue from work, because a lot of even undocumented folks get what's called an individual taxpayer ID that allows them to pay taxes on what they earn, because a lot of them are trying to work towards citizenship.
Yes.
And so this notion that they're just here sucking up resources, which they're not entitled to legally anyway, except if you're looking at like nonprofits, for instance, who are helping folks out, but they're not really entitled to benefits.
Right.
Unless you have a child born here, then you're entitled to some benefits, but really it's not much.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of erroneous, fallacious information floating around out there that are making people angry. And if they knew the truth, they would know.
Yeah.
Much more of our tax dollars go to support corporations and corporate welfare than they do toward undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Department of Health and Human Services. The concern for eliminating racial and ethnic health disparities, which we're going to talk about later, and inequities has been a top priority of the HHS for decades. In the interim, HHS has managed numerous safety net programs that are designed to address such disparities. More recently, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act has been the backbone for making healthcare accessible to low and moderate income individuals and families. Okay, what else? Medicare. Project 2025. I'm so sick of saying Project 2025.
We should just call it what it is.
P2. Will significantly affect at least one important Medicare provision.
Yeah.
So the blueprint proposes making Medicare Advantage. Approximately half of Medicare recipients are currently enrolled in Medicare Advantage plans, the primary enrollment plan for Medicare beneficiaries. Medicare Advantage functions similarly to health insurance plans offered by private employers, in which policyholders have a defined network of providers they're allowed to visit. So the problem with Project 2025's intent to make Medicare Advantage the default plan is that the original Medicare remains a more flexible choice for many recipients. That flexibility exists because original Medicare can be used to visit the 90% of doctors in the United States who accept Medicare, while Medicare Advantage plans force recipients into limited provider networks. Not cool. Medicare Advantage is an already privatized portion of the Medicare program, and Project 2025 intends to fully privatize a wider spectrum of Medicare services. So again, privatization. So there's more. We'll include it in the notes, but let's talk about Medicaid. Medicaid provides health coverage to nearly 1 in 5 Americans, including low-income individuals and families, children, pregnant women, elderly adults, and people with disabilities. Project 2025's plan for Medicaid follows a typical antisocial safety net pattern of the far right, which is to treat access to health as a privilege rather than a right. As a result, the policy blueprint includes measures to incentivize personal responsibility, which translates to the far right's fallacious assumption that safety net programs lead to a permanent dependence.
Not true.
Statistically untrue. Untrue. And the people who are on these programs need these programs. So it's a bunch of bullshit. The IRS, what's going to happen to the IRS? So according to an analysis of Project 2025 by the Joint Economic Committee, it calls for eliminating most tax credits, deductions, and exclusions, but does not specify which ones. Awesome. The two most popular tax credits that overwhelmingly benefit people with low and middle incomes are the child tax credit, which we take advantage of, and the earned income tax credit. The EITC is the largest anti-poverty program in the country, and eliminating it would mean 23 million Americans would fall further into poverty. The Department of Justice, let's talk about that. Project 2025 intends for an incoming Trump administration to have increased control of all executive branch functions. This control would be achieved by centralizing management under a unitary president, which gives the executive branch enormous direct influence over the DOJ and other executive offices. With such expanded powers over the DOJ, Project 2025 suggests that the following: DOJ would actively investigate and potentially prosecute progressive local prosecutors who are perceived as being lenient on crime.
Yikes.
They're coming after San Francisco.
I was going to say,
It's right here. A plan to reduce federal oversight proposes to halt federal civil rights investigations into local police departments, which have historically been used to address systemic abuses. In the area of DOJ's social justice oversight, Project 2025 includes measures intended to eliminate initiatives aimed at addressing systemic racism within the justice system, because that doesn't exist. Systemic racism is made up. Yeah, totally. So, Carolyn, there's a lot to unpack here, as we said in grad school. Coastal liberal elite. But I want to focus on healthcare. I want to focus on healthcare for a number of reasons. One, what just happened with Luigi Mangione. And oh my God, I forgot his name. Terrible. But at the same time, why there's a collective feeling of and why a study came out today that said 40% of young adults think that that was a justified murder. They're like, he's kind of an asshole. I was like, whoa, that's hardcore. I'm not condemning. I understand why somebody would feel that way. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States, accounting for 62 to 72% of all bankruptcies. Even people with health insurance,
which is
can file for bankruptcy due to medical debt, and do. This country treats access to healthcare as a privilege and not a right, and Project 2025 exacerbates this. Can you speak on the impact of this, and specifically about what we call the social determinants of health?
Yes. I mean, I think I'm laughing because I wrote this.
I'm laughing because my dog is snoring.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was your heater.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just my dog. She's old.
I think we needed moral support tonight. So we invited the dog in.
She's a therapy dog. She needs Medicare.
Well, it's funny, when we were writing this last night, this somewhat has to do with this, but more about diversity and whatnot. But if you're on Instagram, go check out Discover Our Planet images. There's a new series by Johnny Miller, and it's called Unequal Scenes. And it highlights from basically aerial shots, deep divides in city development, contrasting, like literally where you can see the divide between the wealthy neighborhood. And you're thinking, oh, this must be in like India or Somalia or some place where you're going, oh, this couldn't be here. And they're mostly
Chicago, bitch.
Right. And it's really obvious to see. But, we've got inequity everywhere in our landscapes. But, you and I are preaching to the choir here. So I know I hope a lot of our listeners, I really want listeners who are in between or on the other side, because I'm actually genuinely curious if this changes some dialogue.
Sure.
But I think if you give people the tools and there are people, you and I have dedicated our lives to helping people in need.
Yes.
I'm not saying we enjoy that, but we want to do that. And I think we believe we come from a framework that people deserve access. People deserve options. They deserve choice. And only goodwill can come from that.
Yeah.
From the macro to the micro level, from inward to outward. I don't think
tide.
that you are not, yes, you are not debilitating people. They're not getting handouts. Right. I think, yes, there is always going to be that one person, but they're everywhere. And I'm not arguing that point. I'm talking, you and I are talking systemically and socially. Right. The community and social services came out of the Industrial Revolution, mm-hmm. the need to protect the masses. And I think, that's what leads to greatness. That's what leads to inventions and better health and healthier life. Yeah. Most people are trying to make money off people's suffering. Right. And for us, the first place my mind and heart goes is, again, at your time of need, when you're already in a crisis medically, and now you're going to have to worry about how you're going to get your basics mm-hmm. of life, mm-hmm. and how you're going to even have a chance to survive when you don't have what we fundamentally know from a health perspective, from a psychology perspective, from a philosophy standard, that if you don't have, again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is problematic in and of itself because it's very individualistic, but that the basics are shelter, food, safety, health. Without those things, you cannot do well. Right. And I think we're adding a deeper trench into this groove that's just going around and around. I don't know how this is going to make things better.
It's not.
And
poverty's big business.
Well, and I think that through doing the research for this, it's just becoming more and more clear to me that that's an ideological thought that I have, that mm-hmm. there are people who actually are trying to make things better. Mm-hmm. There are people who are actively trying to tear this down and make it such. And, I think the fact that the system's already broken. Yeah. And I think, definitely in my life, I would count some of the things feel like paper cuts compared to, I think, what a lot of much other people go through. For sure. But
we have a lot of privilege.
A system where people go into debt for healthcare, to me, is already a broken system. Absolutely. When you also have models, mm-hmm. we're not living in the dark ages anymore. No. You have models that you could see research and facts and data and numbers and statistics and all the things that you and I would go, that makes sense.
Yeah, is look to other developed countries, all of which have healthcare. Mm-hmm. For their people. And yes, you pay more taxes, but guess what?
I'm okay with that.
I never seen a Swedish person go bankrupt over healthcare shit.
Right.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the education.
Because
look at how much debt we have.
All the things that you and I just, it's so obvious. And I think that has so much to do with just, again, we'll call it what it is. It's racism. Yeah.
And classism.
And classism. And, mm-hmm. I just think of how much harder it must be depending, and we talked about resilience and kind of just sheer luck. Yeah. Of the draw and in life, and to put that amount of stress on someone who's already coming from a place of adverse childhood experiences, trauma, mm-hmm. not getting the equity and the liberty mm-hmm. to get to do things that you and I might take for granted. Right. And I don't think we do, because we work with people who don't.
Exactly.
And, I just think the debate, for lack of a better word, is a spectrum of healthcare is, that it's a right versus a privilege. I think mm-hmm. just that alone is problematic. But, medical debt across the United States is worse. There's so much research stating the opposite, that this is going to cause worse physical and mental health, mm-hmm. even premature death. A new study from the American Cancer Society found that for every $100 increase in medical debt, there was 8 more days of poor physical health and 6.8 days of poor mental health reported for 1,000 people. And again, so you're counting eighths of a day. And it's just so obvious, all the things that you and I have learned our entire lives, just that you were taught by your family, even that you don't do these things, Right. And so I think keeping it about racism and white nationalism mm-hmm. is alive. And that's what this is. That's what Project 2025 is, just white nationalism and racism and
Christian white nationalism.
It's, to me, it's about being cruel and seeing one life as deserving more than someone else's based on luck. Yep. Based on luck. This is where my witchy spiritual healer aside, you don't get a conscious choice to pick your body. No. Or the life you live.
No.
It is luck. Yeah. And I think because so many people decided that some lives matter so much more this is what breaks me. You could sit there and say pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
This is a human being. It's divine, even to the point where they're saying it's divine and it's precious and there's a soul.
Yep.
But that life, the second it's born, not even, because we're talking about prenatal care, that you're not going to get.
Right.
And all of that is dependent on circumstance.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, that there are people who feel that because they are born white or because they are born to a certain affluence, they deserve more than the next person.
Right. Well, they are beneficiaries of a system that tells them that.
Yes.
That pounds that into their head.
And now a government.
Yes. Well, the system, the entire system, the entirety of the system, which starts with government. And, you know, I do equity training. That's I do DEI training. Fuck y'all. Eat my dick, Musk. And a huge component of that is, hey, when you work in government, it's your responsibility as someone who works in government to try to dismantle the barriers predicated on race that government has instituted, and that only we within government have the power to be able to do this.
Government, policy, legislature, you know, countries with higher percentages of non-Hispanic Black people, populations with lower educational attainment, higher percentages of people living below the poverty level, uninsured, unemployed, tend to have higher share of medical debt, malnutrition, poor performance, like every single thing that you can think of that is preventable.
We should not have malnutrition in this country. Do you know how much food grocery stores throw away? That's fucking sick. It's a model predicated on profit, not the needs of people. And to have this mindset that, oh, you're not working hard enough, you don't deserve food. Oh, your children are hungry, that's your fault. It's calling...
It's
short-sighted,
frustrating to talk about, because you're saying that and I'm going, okay, if I were going to debate that person right now, I'd say, but of course, well, be that as it may, what are the things that create the ability to be able to function?
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if most people could answer that necessarily. I think so many people, when presented with that scenario, are so indoctrinated with this rugged individual, and they may not even necessarily realize it, like white supremacy thinking.
Yes.
Like if there's something wrong, it is your fault.
Yes.
They're not used to doing like a systemic analysis and looking at history.
Yes.
But we have to change that. But we're not going to change that by dismantling the fucking Department of Education and making education worse.
Well, and the same irony is that feeling of, you know, you hear this every time around the holidays too, of like, you know, well, that person's on the street because of the choices they made.
Right.
Well, and this is always the very egocentric way. Well, I chose to do this.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
No.
Tell me, I will debate that with you.
Yeah.
You prove to me what things were your choice and what was actually just given to you.
Right.
And versus what you lucked into.
Right. It's like Obama's speech before he was president. There was this speech leaked where he was talking to people and saying, you didn't earn it. And what he was saying essentially is, you didn't earn it alone. Hey, white person who started a company, you built this on the backs of a history, a legacy of slave labor. Yep. And, oh, by the way, those roads you're traversing, those are public roads. That's government. Like, that's all he was saying. And it was grossly misinterpreted.
I remember that.
By white folks in a way that made it seem like he was disregarding quote unquote hard work. But it's what you're saying.
Yeah.
How many people in that situation had the benefit of privilege?
Yes.
And resources.
Yep.
That's all he's saying.
Well, and to be able to have that reflection of, oh, because until you see it that way, Gina Castro Rodriguez was a teacher I had.
I remember.
And I think she still works for the city in San Francisco. I think she works for human trafficking. Maybe. I think so.
Yeah.
Not for human trafficking.
Yeah.
She's against it.
Good.
But that class was really transformational for a lot of my classmates, Caucasian classmates, of really, for the first time after all the years of going to a Jesuit school and all these things, something sunk in different about how she was able to present that information.
Amazing.
Probably really similar to what you're doing too with these type of trainings, that you may think you know something until someone goes, well, look at it from over here. And I'm actually going to move your body.
Yes.
Now look at it over here. And it was very immersive, and it wasn't meant to be punitive. It wasn't meant to make you feel bad. And if you did, okay, but you then had to go, okay, but now I have to move on from that. And really actually believe in the fact that there is no such thing as racism against white people. Mm-hmm. There is only racism against people of color.
Right, right.
That doesn't exist.
Otherwise, it's just bias, you know?
It's just a bad day, white person. Right? Like, you're just having a day.
People can be biased against white folks, but we're looking at this from a systemic perspective, y'all.
It won't ruin your ability, though.
That's right.
That's the difference.
How often is it that a white person walks in and tries to get a job and is prevented from doing so by a black person on the basis of them being white? Okay, sure. You might have an instance where the hiring manager is a black person and is like, I'm not hiring a white person. Okay. But one, that's infrequent. Two, that isn't representative of the system we're talking about.
Yes.
People need to look at things not just on an individual level.
Well,
right?
That's the problem.
Yes.
That's the main problem is you often hear that argument. Well, but
yes.
Or, well, for me.
Right.
That's not how you debate.
We're not going to have a productive conversation about racism in America if you're talking about individual racism and I'm over here talking about systemic racism. By the way, that is a slide from my training. But that's what it talks about.
Well, you have to believe that is such a thing.
Exactly.
And I think that's the worst thing. It's not about believing it or not believing. It's fact.
Right. So take us home on the social determinants of health. When I think about social determinants of health, I
went off.
No, it's great. But when I think about it, I think about this other racial training, racial equity training I used to do that talked about the life expectancy of folks in Oakland who live below MacArthur BART station being 12 years shorter than those who live above in Piedmont, the wealthy area. And so to me, that is a huge social determinant of health.
Mm-hmm. So understanding the broader factors of influence just beyond just genetics and medical treatment. Yeah. So conditions, this has to do with where you're born, where you grow up, where you live, where you work, your age, major, we talked about adverse childhood experiences, income, social status, education, literacy, social support networks, your neighborhood, physical environment, healthcare access, quality. These are things I would do as part of an assessment with a new client, if for nothing else, to give them some perspective about the world they're living in. But, this is where the issue of medical debt really intersects with social determinants of health, because access to health insurance, affordable care, and quality treatment directly impact health outcomes. Yeah. And without access to affordable healthcare, individuals are more likely to defer necessary care until their conditions become more severe, more costly, both financially and in terms of health. And we, the social determinants of health refer to, they're sort of common, and these are things that are commonly accepted. We know the CDC, the World Health Organization, these are scientific based, nonpartisan for the most part, right? Yeah. Places, and these are commonly accepted that your gender or your sexual orientation, social gender identity, race, economics, education, employment, housing, food, access, security. There's no debate that these are important factors. Right. These are things that you bring a baby home from the hospital and they want it. A good social worker is going to make sure, okay, do you have this? Do you have this? Right. There's a checklist. Yeah. God, you bring a dog home from the SPCA, they're going to make sure that do you have access to these things, or we will not give you this dog. Yeah. You cannot safely adopt this. This isn't like we've made this shit up. Right. These are things that when you have an animal, you say, I have to give them clean water and healthy food and access to things.
But when you put this within the context of a framework of a racist white supremacy system, saying that these things that we know don't ensure exist. People thrive, the lower rates of Black African-American folks having access to these things is not the result of systemic inequities. It's a personal failing.
And that is just so categorically unfounded. Yeah, it is. In any, you're an idiot. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Yeah. Which I think even to acknowledge that you're stupid about that, you actually have to have some intelligence. Right. So, and I think I get very upset about this too, because I think look at where we've come in medicine and in education.
Yeah.
And God, look at where we've come in space travel, all these different, if you believe that. My dad was a surgeon and a physician, and I think about how much he marveled even when I was studying science in high school. Like, whoa, they didn't even have that yet. They were just using an electron microscope at the time. Look at what we've done. Look at what we have the capability to do as humans. We are so incredible. And look what we're doing.
Right.
We are going backward. This is pushing us back in time. It's going to feel like the colonies, whether you're thinking of the 1600 colonies or the Margaret Atwood ones. It's going to happen, and it's going to make it worse. And if you think that disadvantaging people even more is going to empower them to be more, quote, resilient, I'm sick of seeing that shit. Do not ask me to be resilient when you have a boot on my neck.
Right. Well, no, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's all you have to do, right? I hate it. So let's talk a bit about, so again, we're picking the things that are really, really important to us. And what's really important to us is the impact on federal diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So Project 2025 seeks to dismantle all the ways in which diversity, equity, and inclusion have influenced and integrated the federal government. The primary recommendation is to eliminate equity and inclusion under the promise to restore the American family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children.
Oh, God.
That is sick. Like Matt Gaetz is going to protect our children.
Yeah.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, seriously.
This is from a Fast Company article. In the section devoted to the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, the author suggests that the role of Chief Diversity Officer should be eliminated, along with an agency-wide scorecard that tracks compliance with DEI initiatives. When the authors address the Department of Treasury, they propose not only scrapping all of the agency's efforts to promote equity, but also holding its staff accountable for participating in those initiatives. Treat the participation in any critical race theory or DEI initiative without objecting on constitutional moral grounds as per se grounds for termination of employment, they wrote, in addition to advocating for making public all DUI-related communications. The authors even take issue with alleged efforts at the National Institutes of Health to expand the representation of female speakers at science conferences. They have an issue with that.
This is in writing.
Yeah. Yep. It's sick. Project 2025's blueprint mandate for leadership also includes the following: dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion within government, eliminate chief diversity officers, diversity, equity, and inclusion committees and equity plans, establish diversity, equity, and inclusion task forces to determine the scope, breadth, and depth of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives so they can crack down on them.
Right.
Retaliate against professionals who participate in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and treating participation as a grounds for termination, making it impossible to prove discrimination by prohibiting the collection of EEO1 data, e.g. representation data like race and ethnicity. Okay, so this is also from the same article.
Well, and this is going to go into sexual orientation and gender identity as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with that because the diversity, equity, and inclusion training that I do focuses on that too.
Yes.
And talks about the intersectionality.
Yeah.
So the authors characterize workplace DEI efforts as a violation of anti-discrimination laws, bizarro world, directing the Department of Justice to task the Civil Rights Division with the return to lawfulness and investigating public and private employers, even though numerous federal laws prohibit discrimination based on notable immutable characteristics such as race and sex. The Biden administration, through the DOJ's Civil Rights Division and other federal entities, has enshrined affirmative discrimination in all aspects of its operation under the guise of equity, they wrote. Oh my God. So they're basically saying that DEI constitutes discrimination against white people and that the Civil Rights Division needs to take care of these white folks and ensure that they aren't discriminated against.
That's not the intention.
No, it's not the intention. Let me tell you what the intention is. This is just a little anecdote from the training that I do. And I was talking to you about this earlier. And it makes total sense because to me, this is what DEI means. So in the 70s, The New York Symphony, notably, arguably one of the best symphonies in the world, was like, we don't have enough female musicians.
Weird.
And so what they decided to do, or what somebody told them to do, was, hey, you're going to have people audition behind a screen. So you can't tell if they're male or female, right? Mm-hmm. They did that. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, the number of female musicians in the orchestra went up. You want to know how they made this number even higher? They had people walk in behind the screen barefoot. So there weren't women coming in heels anymore. So you couldn't distinguish what you thought was high heels from flats.
You're just hearing the quality of the music.
Exactly. And I'm almost certain they reached gender or sex parity on that basis. That is what DEI is. Removing or trying to remove barriers predicated on bias, bias that we might not even be aware that we have. Like what I was saying earlier. Looking at the same fucking resume and having a name that sounds Black African American versus a name that sounds Anglo, the same fucking credentials, literally verbatim, same resume, and being like, oh, this Black person doesn't have the same skills as this person because they're focused solely on the name.
Yes. Even if they don't think they are.
Right.
Everyone has bias.
This is DEI. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a bit about some of the objections to DEI and notably some of the crazy shit that Elon Musk has said about it.
I hate this guy. Take his hair plugs out and his chin implants.
He's so disgusting. He looks like a pale, like he looks like he's made of fetal skin.
Yes.
He's just so like pasty and disgusting.
Oh, God. So talk about having gender affirming care.
Oh, Lord.
His hair plugs, his skin, his jaw injections.
Oh my God.
He made you look more masculine. That's gender affirming care.
It's true. Yeah, I guess to an extent you can make that argument, right?
Right?
Okay. So this is from Forbes. Yeah, I'm going to trash him everywhere I can get.
Good.
In a post on X, Elon Musk wrote, DEI is just another word for racism. Shame on anyone who uses it.
This is such gaslighting.
It's so ridiculous. He's also fond of referring to DEI as didn't earn it.
Oh, God.
Which is bullshit. The Chronicle of Higher Education is currently tracking 82 bills in 28 states and the U.S. Congress that would prohibit colleges from having diversity, equity, and inclusion offices or staff, ban mandatory diversity training, forbid institutions to use diversity statements in hiring and promotion, or bar colleges from considering race, sex, ethnicity, or national origin in admissions and employment. As of March 29th, 13 bills have secured legislative approval. 12 have become law. Musk claimed in a series of posts on X that efforts to diversify workforces at those companies have made air travel less safe. Oh, yeah, he was talking about this.
The black pilot, yeah.
He offered no evidence for the claim, and one of his replies directed attention to a post by someone else speculating about the IQ of black airline employees. It will take an airplane crashing and killing hundreds of people for them to change this crazy policy of die, he wrote. Instead of saying DEI, he wrote die. He's such a fucking idiot. He thinks he's so funny and so creative, but guess what? Other people do his work and he just steals people's fucking ideas.
Even Trump thinks you're annoying.
Yeah. The bromance is going to die. Trust me. Trust me. So this brings me to one of our favorite topics, and that's racism. So opposition to DEI is an effort to roll back the gains made by women and people of color and LGBTQ folks, name the marginalized, historically marginalized population, as well as a coordinated attack on free speech. This is from the ACLU. In 2023, the far right introduced at least 65 bills to limit DEI in higher education in 25 states and the U.S. 8 bills became law. I think this is before 12 bills became law that this was written.
Okay.
So this attack on DEI is part of a larger backlash against racial justice efforts that ignited after the 2020 killing of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. So instead of ceasing to censor free speech, the far right pivoted to target DEI programs. For example, Florida passed Senate Bill 266 in April 2023. This law would expand the Stop Woke, W-O-K, Act's prohibition on training and instruction on racism and sexism, seeking to eliminate DEI programs and heavily restrict certain college majors to DEI. Oh my God. So this is from the Cincinnati Herald.
Wow.
Recent research published in the peer-reviewed Journal of Occupational and Organizational Psychology found recent research indicates that conservative opposition to DEI programs is often rooted in anti-Black racism, surprise, rather than legitimate concerns regarding job performance. The studies show that higher levels of conservatism correlate with decreased interest in DEI organizations and a perception of unfairness, suggesting that opposition to DEI may reflect race-related anxieties rather than political or job-related arguments.
Oh, poor white
Something
people.
we obviously knew.
Are you anxious?
You need a study.
You couldn't
study.
buy your mommy and daddy couldn't buy you into
well, even
USC.
poor white people, right?
Yeah.
Like even low-income white people think, oh, there's unfair advantages. Like I'm low income, I should get the same advantages that a person of color is getting, for instance. And that's a bogus argument for a lot of reasons. And we're not necessarily going to go into that. But I think that white folks, no matter what the economic strata they're in, there are plenty
still
of
have an advantage.
They have that advantage. And they also think that
yes,
people of color are getting over on them.
Yes.
So, Carolyn, I want to focus on DEI because Republicans are, one, obsessed with eliminating it, and two, perpetuate this incorrect interpretation of DEI that makes white people look disadvantaged by DEI. Can we talk about what DEI really is, how data demonstrates diversity benefits everyone, and why conservatives equate DEI initiatives with a lack of fairness?
My current supervisor has this really cute little paper source thing calendar, and December was diversity is the roots, equity is the fruit.
I love that.
I love that too. Cute. Paper source. Anyway,
paper source so woke.
I know, right? I think they're owned by Barnes and Noble. God forbid, whatever they're a part of. I know, right? But again, we were talking about this. Tell me one time that one size fits all was ever accurate.
Yeah.
I don't want the Brandy Melville of
shit fell apart
of politics.
Yeah, we all know how they treated their employees,
right?
If you watch the documentary.
To me, it feels so obvious, but I think, like we talked about again, our agenda and our goal and our vision aligns with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And social justice.
Yes,
and seeing the inequities and being aware of them and helping people and giving them again access and equality. And the right to pursue what they, again, pursuit of happiness.
Right.
If you have the right tools, you will have that. And everyone is deserving of that.
Yeah.
But I think I'm, again, really getting humbled by I can see why the other side that actually doesn't work for them because it's not racist. It's a utopian idea that, all people are worthy.
Yeah.
And I don't think they do think all people are worthy. All white people are worthy.
Yeah. If your whole, lens, your whole philosophy of life is predicated on othering people.
Yes.
Or anybody who's in a shitty situation, it's their fault.
Yes.
It's going to be hard for you to see this.
Well, and you're taking away the education of someone who might even not know that that's happening to them. But imagine seeing something in a training and going, oh my God, that did happen to me.
Yeah.
And then being able to deal with it. And we talked about that graphic of the equity, equality, liberation.
Yeah.
The three characters on, little cartoon, I think they're all little dudes standing on boxes. And you're just like, let's just take the fence down.
Right.
That way, we take the barrier away.
Right.
But here's the research, right? So extensive research shows that DEI isn't just a moral imperative. It's a practical advantage that benefits everyone.
Yeah.
So we know for a fact and these are big companies that have done this, invested in it, Apple, Google, companies that I may not necessarily be a fan of, Walmart even, although they just rolled it back. But we know that diverse teams are more innovative. When I worked at the YMCA, we used to kind of joke that it'd be a bunch of old adults planning summer camps.
Yeah.
And we kind of went, let's bring a couple kids in here and let's see what they think a fun camp would be.
Voice,
exactly. That, studies show that organizations with diverse teams are more innovative and better at problem solving. Different perspectives, different life experiences lead to more creative ideas, more solutions. This I saw a lot. This McKinsey report from 2020 found that companies with greater racial and ethnic diversity, 35% more likely to have financial returns above their industry median.
Awesome.
So basically exactly.
Yep.
If that's what you're looking for is bottom line, but I think they're saying that's what they're looking for, but they're really not.
No,
they're looking for white supremacy.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah,
and
they don't care about this.
If we could just call Project 2025, white supremacy project.
Mein Kampf Part 2.
Mein Kampf Part 2.
Part 2.
God damn it. So improved decision making. When people from different backgrounds are involved in decision making, it leads to better outcomes. For instance, a study by Clover Pop found that diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time.
That's high.
This is because diversity reduces the likelihood of groupthink and encourages people to think more critically. We know that critical thinking helps self-reflection. And if you have good self-reflection, you have better options at making alternative hypotheses. We know this in psychology. If I'm only going to sit there and give that person my perspective, I'm not helping them.
Right.
I'm asking you to think of 20 different ways to think about, yes, I understand that's how your mom thinks, but what do you think? Why do you think she thinks that way?
Right.
And where did that come from?
Oh,
Where
by
did
the way,
that
this
come
is
from?
how my mom thinks.
Yes.
Ooh, let's like generate some new ideas on this basis.
Exactly. All these moms, right?
Yeah.
Fuck them. But we love them. But again, it's a good thing when people are thinking critically. There's more. I think you're able to have a more breadth of conversation too. Which again, you and I sit there and go, "Wow, that's great."
Yeah.
Well, of course, someone wouldn't want that if they're trying to turn you all into sheeple. Higher employee engagement. DEI initiatives also correlate with higher levels of employee engagement retention. Your dog's
She's having a dream.
Dog mirror. Are you dreaming about
She's
racism?
she's having a nightmare about Elon Musk.
Probably.
He's the one eating the dogs.
He probably is. He's so fucking weird. A Gallup study looked at inclusive workplaces who are more likely to feel valued, engaged, committed to their organizations. You're working in a department that you felt never better.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're all treated equally. Your hiring practices are good. There's a good, diverse, and everyone embraces that.
Sometimes I'm the only white person in a space.
That must feel nice.
Which is cool, and I think a lot of white people haven't had that experience.
I think so too.
No, and I think and that's how a lot of Black folks feel across this country. Sometimes, especially the higher you get in corporate America, for instance, sometimes you're the only person of color in the room. And that's got to be a tremendous burden. It's got to be, a little bit scary.
Well, from a feminine perspective, you and I can speak to that in business. And although we've always worked in nonprofits, which are heavily female, but if you're trying to serve a particular population, then you have to have representation of that population in order to, so anyway, market research. We also know that companies that embrace diversity can better serve. We just talked about diverse customer bases. So if you don't believe this, look it up. You cannot experience racism as a white person. There is no such thing.
There isn't.
I dare you to list all the ways that racism impacts, I don't know what SDH, social determinants of health, I wrote, thank you, etc. of white people. It just doesn't happen, period. Let's just accept it and move on.
No.
And I watched the scene in The Help where Aibileen confronts, everyone should watch The Help and read that book. Aibileen confronts.
Isn't it a white savior book?
It is a little bit, but there's this one part, let me just tell the one part where the main character, Aibileen, confronts this really racist person. She basically just, in my interpretation of the scene, kind of holds a mirror up to her and just is like, isn't it exhausting being you?
Yeah.
And all this hate inside you and all this ickiness, don't you get tired? And I think that's the difference, is that I think this population of white supremacists, similar to historically, feels that it's their divine right and that they are agents of God and that they are serving a higher purpose.
Manifest destiny.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that by having this, that if you need to step on other people to feel good about yourself and who you are, when you're actually more than half the time doing the very things, Matt Gaetz, that you purport to be against, fucking look in a mirror.
Yeah.
That's the part that I don't know how you look at yourself. Cause I know I look at myself in the mirror and feel good about the way I treat people and the values that I live and breathe.
Yep.
And I don't understand how they do. And I think that part of them is just masked with this indoctrination of we're in the right, we're actually on a godly mission that is saving people who are not worthy because of their skin color.
Yeah. And when you only kick it with other people who think like you, this is why they're afraid of diversity.
Yes.
Because if they start to associate with people of color who think differently, my Lord, they might have to change their tune. I mean, it's doubtful that they would, but they're screaming into a vacuum, into an echo chamber. And everybody around them thinks like them. And unfortunately, a lot of these people have tremendous power.
And wealth.
Yes. And so they can convert their racist thoughts and ideologies into legislation and action. And that's what Project 2025 is. That's the intention, to convert this ideology into an even stronger dominant narrative.
Yep.
So how do we fight back, guys? We're going to leave you with a little
please
hope.
Tell me.
We've been ranting for a while. So it's like Harvey Milk always used to say, you got to give them hope. And I believe that strongly. He's one of my heroes. So, well, the public announcement of Project 2025 by the Heritage Foundation seemed to catch political and social policy experts by surprise. The reaction to this detailed manifesto was actually swift, guys. Like I was saying, once people started talking about it, people started doing something. To their credit, the progressive social justice community quickly raised the alarm about the depths of the harmful right policies of Project 2025. More important, advocates immediately recognized that Project 2025 was not an academic style policy paper, but a true blueprint for completely transforming the federal bureaucracy into an autocratic government apparatus dominated by a president armed with unitary executive powers. Moreover, the authors of Project 2025 are fully confident that the new Trump administration will be prepared to begin implementing the policy on day one. So first, we've linked an ACLU article that outlines how to fight back against everything we mentioned at the beginning of the episode. The article even provides letter templates to send to your elected representatives. Writing letters does work, y'all. It does, especially if electeds get such an influx of these letters and people showing up on the, the places where they congregate. If they think their political skins are on the line in the next election, they'll be moved to action.
Will there be a next election?
God damn it, I hope so. So here's what
I'm supposed to be hopeful. Shut up, Carolyn.
I know. This is the hopeful part, damn it.
Damn it.
Don't shit on my cupcake and call it frosting or something. So here's what the National Urban League suggests. Share information. That's what we're doing right now, y'all. We're using our small but mighty platform to share information. One of the biggest tools we can use in preparation for Project 2025 is raising public awareness about the project's impacts through media, public forums, several education initiatives, raising voter awareness about threats to democracy, increase the chances that people will vote against these changes. So that's what we're doing here with our small but mighty platform, as I said. Now, warning people about the demise of our democracy didn't work so well for the Democrats as a strategy in the last election. So talk to people about things like how Medicare and Medicaid will get impacted, how the Department of Education will be impacted, the things that impact millions of people's lives, including possibly the person that you're talking to. Talk about the erosion of the safety standards in their workplace. These things matter to people. Maybe the demise of the democracy doesn't resonate because, one, they either don't believe it's going to happen or they're fucking apathetic. But you know what? Going to work and being able to come home with a paycheck and have benefits and feel safe at work, that's going to resonate with a lot of people. And that's going to go away if fucking OSHA goes away. Okay, so share information. Join a union. If you don't have a union where you're employed, start a fucking union. You want a free organizing guide? We've got one. Click on the Action Network link in our notes. And you know what? Furthermore, run for public office. If you're a woman, check out the Emerge program. I went through that program. Kamala Harris helped bring that program here to San Francisco, to California.
Has she spoken?
She has. Since what happened? Yeah, she has a couple of times.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going to happen and where she's going to go, but I hope it's somewhere good because I really love her.
Yeah.
So anyway, because Project 2025 spells literal death for our environment, here's what Earth Justice suggests. Defend endangered species. All right. So the Trump administration went after both Yellowstone grizzlies and the Endangered Species Act itself. Both times, Earth Justice went straight to court. one of their cases spared the grizzlies from planned trophy hunts. All right. So
Jesus
support
Christ.
these organizations because they're the ones going to court and fighting for our planet, fighting for endangered species. Okay. So there's more information in our show notes about how you can do that. Earth Justice is a really good organization, at least as far as I know. Okay. Do you know there's a task force in Congress dedicated to stopping Project 2025? So this task force was announced by Representative Jared Huffman. He's a Democrat from California earlier this year, and its members are leaders on many of the issues currently under attack by Project 2025. So there's more information about who is involved in this, but no, there are people who are dedicated to fighting this from multiple states, and they are tapped into defending the very things that Project 2025 is trying to strip away. Find out who they are. Find out how you can support them, stand with them. Here's a little more hope from that document that I mentioned initially. Oh, no, this is a different one. This is Democracy Docket. So repeatedly throughout the Project 2025 chapters, they say to just move forward, go ahead and implement and worry about defending it in court later. Expect legal challenges because they know what they're doing is unlawful. And that's exactly what Skye Perryman, President and CEO of the nonpartisan legal and public policy research nonprofit Democracy Forward, is ready for. Under Perryman's leadership, Democracy Forward organized Democracy 2025, a coalition of hundreds of lawyers from 280 different organizations to fight Project 2025 and the incoming Trump administration in the courts. The question remains, though, is how courts will rule whatever legal challenges arise, despite the conservative supermajority in the U.S. Supreme Court and the army of judges that Trump appointed in his first term. Perryman is confident about the state of the judiciary. President Biden has appointed more than 200 pro-democracy judges since 2021. She said, the federal courts on day one of the second Trump administration are better than they were on the last day of the first Trump administration. So it's not all bad, y'all.
And he can't just have an executive order and override that, right?
No. Okay. No. Those judges are there.
Okay.
It's just know, guys, that these things exist. We're going to put the links in our show notes. And there's so many things that you can do. Don't feel helpless.
No.
And know that true power coalesces, forms, and foments at the bottom, at the proverbial bottom. Government, the people at the top have never just benevolently given us things. We have to fucking fight. And look at, I say this all the time, look at women's rights, look at civil rights, look at the strides that we have made. Granted, some of those things have been rolled back, but study progressive movements. Look at how they came about. Look at how change was made. And maybe you'll feel less hopeless because you can be a part of that change.
This might be the push we need to have the next big progressive movement.
Sure. It might be. And I think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it can get much worse. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Fuck. Hope. Okay, guys. So we got to let you go. That was...
The power of Harvey Milk compels you.
Yes. That was over an hour of us talking. We hope you feel compelled to take action. Yeah. We hope you don't feel resigned to hopelessness.
Yeah, please don't.
We're all in this together. We are. And we're going to keep fighting for as long as, the institutions exist. There are courts that have judges that care about democracy, the preservation of democracy, the preservation of checks and balances. We're going to keep fucking fighting, you guys.
Talk, build community.
Yeah. It's not over.
Be supportive of each other.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll leave you with that. We are 2 days away from Christmas and Hanukkah.
Whee!
So Merry Christmas.
And we'll
Happy
be together
Hanukkah.
a lot. So be prepared for some tomfoolery.
Yeah.
Some horsing around or some fucking around, as you said.
What did my child say? Fucking around earlier. Yeah, that was funny. It's not, he said, it's not fuck around time when we sat down at dinner. And I was like,
he's not wrong.
And then he proceeded to fuck around a lot. So yeah, a lot of shows right now, a lot of podcasts are taking a winter break, a holiday break.
Not us.
We're actually going to go hard. So before we bring you our episode on the history of the insurance industry, which we think is incredibly timely, we're going to hit you with some Christmas demons from around the world. So we might even be recording this on Christmas night, you guys.
I think that'd be hilarious.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to be really, we're going to be drunk in front of a Yule log.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Look forward to that. We love you. Keep listening. Stay helpful. Follow us on TikTok at TwatJC. You can also find us at Instagram. And oh no, we're not on Facebook. Who the fuck's on Facebook?
No, it's on Facebook.
Anyway, y'all, thanks for listening. Bye.